Greetings, everybody. My name is Phumzile. We are here in this amazing space, the Institute of Africology Resource Center, and we are sitting with Brother Sa, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to please introduce yourself to our viewers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Sar Ahmadi El Ben Yehuda. I'm the Minister of Information for the African Hebrew Israelites at Jerusalem. We are a community of nearly 3,000, probably more by now, 3,000 former Africans in America who migrated to the land of Israel. We consider Israel to be Northeast Africa. We followed the vision of our spiritual leader, our anointed spiritual leader, Ben Ami, who had a vision in 1966, that it was time for our people to return back to the land of our ancestries. And we spent 2.5 years in a wilderness experience, moving through Liberia of West Africa, before we decided that we were ready to return back to our land in 1969. And we've been there ever since. We have actually pioneered a lifestyle and a community that is full of great blessings and examples. I think that the world, particularly the Adenic lands, African lands, are in need of paying attention to. So on behalf of the community, I'm pleased to be here, and I want to give all praises to the Holy One of Israel, to Yahweh, to the God of Israel, and to all those that are in search of truth, justice, peace, mercy, love on this plane of our existence, not somewhere after we die and go up to heaven in the sky.
Right where we are.
But I'm pleased to be here with you.
Thank you.
Here in Southern Eden.
Southern
Paradise.
Southern Paradise.
Yeah.
I like that terminology of the idea, because we don't normally see the space that we are in as a paradise.
Right.
We grow up being told that this is earth, and somewhere up there is a heaven. That's where the paradise is, and somewhere down there is a hell.
Hell, yeah.
So thank you for reminding us of that. And just as a follow-up question, I'd like to maybe ask you if you can just give us an idea of what us, especially in this paradise, what we should know about Hebrew Israelites. What should we be aware of? What should we be knowing?
Well, on a very, very basic level,
yes,
Israel sits on the African tectonic plate. And so that means that geologically, and geographically, that Israel is a part of Africa. But in our minds, Israel has been disconnected. And in fact, in many African lands and African cultures, the people actually thought that the only way you could get to Israel was that you had to die, that Israel wasn't even a geographical location like that. I bear witness in talking with peoples in my travels, whether it's in Benin or Liberia or Ghana, that this was the mindset. In fact, and then attached to that, of course, is the current makeup of the people of Israel, and even the Palestinians. That genetic or the complexion of the peoples there. People have this idea. I was walking in what's called the Volta region, and the Airways have a saying that said, if it's on a Sunday and you're on your way to church and you see a white man, that you've seen God and you can go on back to home. and so I used to think it really wasn't true, but I found out that indeed that is a saying in airway culture. That is a reality. That is the conscious or the unconscious mind that we've been left relative to how we relate to the land of the Bible. And so when you take it further, you realize that the Bible is now, and even many of our Afrocentric conscious, the awakening Africanist perceptions are that the Bible is a white man's book, and we would have to beg to differ, and adamantly so, because it was written those books were written in the language of Hebrew. And do your research. Any African, search for the language of Hebrew, it will say it's an Afro-Semitic, Afro-Asiatic language. What does the Afro imply? It's very clear, and it's the sister languages are Arabic,
Right.
and the two Ethiopic languages of Amharic and the ancient Gaze.
Yes.
So we're talking about an African people who wrote and communicated in an African dialect. And then when you look at the peoples of that land, the indigenous peoples of that land, they underwent huge upheavals, not the least of which were the Greek Empire that came in and culturally, through their cultural imperialist tendencies, had the people of that region speaking Greek.
Right.
Before they didn't, much like today, English is, or whatever, the francophone or whatever, that's the same thing.
Yes,
and so
exactly.
they would not practice their own languages. They felt that the Greeks were superior.
Yes.
And that's how the Greeks carried it. And then after several hundred years of Greek domination, then came the Romans. And the Romans came with an iron fist. And so that is when the culture of the Israelites, those who were rebelling, amongst those who were rebelling would have been Yeshua, who now is called Jesus, even there was no J not only in Hebrew, but in any language on the planet Earth 2,000 years ago. So that was during the time of Yeshua's rebellion, and he was a revolutionary. And so the temple at Jerusalem was crushed, smashed physically, and the culture was smashed, and the Israelites were put into exile. And then logically, if you look at a people who became refugees, when we look at the current makeup and the history that we've somehow been given and more likely assumed that happened, we place the original people of Israel migrating to Russia and Poland and Czechoslovakia and those lands, Germany and what have you. That doesn't make sense, because if a Roman occupying military force is coming from the north, you don't have to have been a member of the South African National Defense Forces to know you don't beat a retreat in the same direction. You would flee south.
Yes.
And so biblically, there's always been a strong connection. In all the books, there's been, I think Egypt and Ethiopia are mentioned over 1,500 times in the Bible. That's a white man's book. They didn't do a very good job, of disconnecting us. And so the history, Joseph and his brethren. Joseph was sold into captivity.
Yes.
Joseph matriculates up into a high position in the Egyptian culture, in the land. And when his brothers needed help later, they didn't even recognize Joseph sitting on the throne.
Yes.
So it tells us that the trappings of the culture were different, but the complexion and the appearance of Israelites compared to ancient Egyptians, basically the same.
The same, exactly.
And so that's very important for us to know and to build on this idea to correct the problems that we now have when we talk about